Hey everyone, Richard from Digital Foundry here, and this is PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds running on Xbox One and Xbox One X. And obviously a lot of controversy about this one, particularly about its performance. And joining me to talk about the game and our experiences of it so far, Tom Morgan.
Hi there.
How's it all going?
Pretty good. It's been a good day of playing this one with you in synced play in multiplayer.
Yeah, so let's explain the methodology here, because this is a massively dynamic game. Anything can happen at any moment, and to get a fair comparison between Xbox One and the X, we decided to play the game on two different machines in the same instance. So we buddied up on the title screen and we're basically locked together for the duration here. So this is the same gameplay, the same server. We're literally playing together here to get the most accurate results. So this is kind of like the starting point of the game, the lobby. So I would say it's not exactly the most attractive way to kick off the experience.
Yeah, what a first impression, right? Right away, 20 frames per second under that on the original Xbox One, and look at those textures, you know, things are definitely not being managed well on the memory front. You can clearly see Xbox One X is actually pushing out better looking textures if we're taking things on the visual front. But as far as frame rate goes, that's the killer.
Yeah, it's not good, is it? And as we segue into the initial landing part of the game, then nothing really improves here. It's looking absolutely dreadful.
Right, so this is with all 100 players, or in theory all 100, and yeah, it is at its worst at this point, it's worth saying.
Yeah, I mean, PUBG never has been a terrifically optimized experience on the PC, and on the Xbox One and the X, particularly when it's so heavy on CPU resources, I'm guessing to get it running at all is quite an achievement. We'll talk about that in a minute. But the initial stages of the game, the lobby area is just totally dreadful. The initial landing area, I mean, I've seen it dip as low as 4 frames per second. There's a massive stutter when you start the game on base hardware. And as we come into land here, well, things aren't really that much better, are they?
You can tally up all the causes of this though. If we're pinning the CPU as the culprit, you know, you've got the massive draw calls as you swoop down in that parachute. You've got the netcode trying to work out where all the players are landing all at once. Yeah, it just takes a real toll. I mean, it's kind of surprising that we're even seeing it on the Xbox One X to a certain extent, but yeah, this is really a bad first impression as you land especially.
Before we go on, we'll say that it does get better, and actually now you can see here we're kind of moving into sort of general combat. So there's two of us being humiliated by one guy here. You can see me sort of limping out of the corner there in a desperate attempt to stay alive. Bottom line though, it does reach 30 frames per second at points, but there's a kind of multitude of bottlenecks happening here, and performance can just vary dramatically. So here we're trying out just driving about in a Jeep, and you can see a big differential in frame rates between the Xbox One X and the base hardware. I mean, it's, you know, 5, 6, 7 frames per second here. Now you'll note that I'm bringing up, in the base Xbox One area, I'm bringing up the map quite often. This is because we kind of want to know where we're going. But in the gameplay areas, yeah, you can see those parallel lines, as performance is just so much better on the Xbox One X. But, you know, it varies dramatically.
And it's curious because there's not a person in sight as we're going around these buildings. It is just the constant movement at a fast rate. It's worth saying that getting in a vehicle is one of the best ways to sync things up perfectly and get an accurate frame rate reading on both sides. We'll come on to why in a second, because it turns out you get a very good matched view when you have the spectator view on one side after one player dies.
Yeah, so spectator view, now this is interesting here. Basically, I'm going in to confront somebody who's I didn't actually know about this. He's actually lurking in this room here, lurking in the toilet no less. And he guns me down like a stinking pig. And then you come along and bludgeon him to death with a frying pan.
Well, that seemed like the only way.
But the crucial thing here for technical analysis purposes is that I am able to spectate you. Interesting stuff here, because well, you can see here that suddenly we have a big lurching frame rate differential, 30 FPS versus 20 FPS, which I suspect may not be actually representative of gameplay, just the spectator area.
Yeah, as I say, it isn't a fair representation of what you get on Xbox One. Obviously you've seen how it is before. It's normally a lot better than this during regular gameplay. But you've got to imagine the Xbox One side, being the spectator, is sort of polling data. It's always kind of feeding off the output data from the Xbox One X side. And so, yeah, it's not a fair representation. But as an early insight into what you get on the visual comparison front, yeah, there's actually not many better ways to do this.
Yeah, this is interesting because, well, we can actually match up the viewpoints here pretty closely. We can do all these crazy things like looking at ground textures, and a number of differences come to the fore. So yeah, we're going to be doing a full comparison between the base Xbox One and the PC version. But as you can see here, number of differences. First of all, texture quality on the base hardware, it really isn't impressive at all compared to the X. But even then, the X isn't exactly setting new standards in graphical quality.
You do get the texture filtering boost on X as well, but the asset quality itself, even up close, you can definitely see a huge difference. It's like soup on the original Xbox One, which is really quite sad to see.
Yeah, and the other thing is draw distances, particularly on foliage, that sort of thing. It is just significantly improved on the Xbox One X.
Right, so as you kind of walk down this hill, you can see a kind of cascade with all the plants kind of filling in the background, and geometry as well even. Let's
just tick off the resolution front. Pretty sure at this point it's native 1080p versus native 4K on the X. So you are getting more than just a resolution boost.
On first hearing that, I was a little bit surprised, but then when you think about it, the bottleneck really isn't the GPU, so it makes sense to push it as far as you can with the 4K on Xbox One X.
Yeah, there's some pretty grim frame rate readings here, but at the same time, as I said, sometimes things just sort of play out at 30 frames per second as you'd hope. It's just you can never really guarantee at what point the frame rate is actually going to be pretty solid. So here we are bombing about on a motorcycle. We're actually getting sniped here if you're wondering why we keep falling over. This isn't really what we were planning, but again, the dynamic nature of the game. But point is, 30 frames per second. The game is indeed capable of doing it.
So the big question I've got to ask you, Rich, is how have we ended up in this situation with a 6 teraflop machine on left pushing out results like this, as variable as this?
Well, PUBG has a very poor history when it comes to performance, even on the PC side of things. I think the bottom line is it uses 4 threads for main execution and up to 4 more, possibly more than that, in order to carry out ancillary tasks. But the bottom line is we've got an 8-core CPU here with an engine that works best on 4 cores, and it's just not really working particularly well. Now, one thing to bear in mind, which I actually found quite surprising and a bit disappointing, in the lead up to PUBG's release, quite a lot of marketing from Microsoft about the advanced technology group being involved with optimizing the game. Now, these guys are like the unsung heroes of console development. They liaise with developers. They introduce new techniques that improve performance, that improve visual features. These guys make these consoles possible in a sense. Microsoft have got this team. Sony have got their own version of the team. They're apparently deeply involved with this. And then you have the involvement of the Coalition, who worked on Gears of War 4. These guys have produced what I would say is possibly the finest Unreal Engine 4 game of the generation, certainly on consoles, in my opinion at least. And, whoa, we've got these guys involved with PUBG as well. It's going to be awesome. And yet, you saw those frame rate readings earlier. It was a bit of a mess. And at best, we're looking at 30 FPS. And it isn't exactly impressive from a visual standpoint. So from my perspective, it's actually really disappointing that we're getting this kind of turnout when you've got that much talent apparently involved with the game.
Yeah, it's very reminiscent of other kind of low-key titles that became a sleeper hit. Ark comes to mind, DayZ, of course. This falls into that category where the enticement of the concept is bigger than the execution, and this feels like it has a long way to go before it feels like a fully polished product.
Yeah, I agree entirely, and to be fair, it is marked as a early access preview piece of code. We should fully expect it to get better than this. But at the same time, when you have the likes of Microsoft's Advanced Technology Group and the Coalition involved, is 30 frames per second locked too much to ask for even at this stage? I mean, obviously things are going to get better, but in terms of getting a release out that's going to work well with console audiences, I'm not so sure.
Right, so this is just a performance analysis, and we've got a bit more coverage of this game to come, mainly looking at the visual comparisons between the Xbox consoles and also PC, I believe.
Yeah, we're going to be taking a look at the PC version. We're going to be doing a bit more of the spectator mode comparisons in order to get a much better lock on what the differences are between Xbox One and Xbox One X. So yeah, plenty more PUBG to come. But this has just been about the performance, which for many people is the big story at the moment. They want to know what's going on. A lot of conflicting stories going on out there. And based on the highly variable performance we're seeing, sort of, you know, from one moment to the next, possibly quite understandable that there'd be quite a lot of conflicting information out there. The bottom line is the game just seems to change its performance profile radically at any given moment here. Tried our best here to give both versions of the game a fair shake in the fairest way possible. And, well, I think, you know, you're right. It's the concept that wins out here. But at the same time, Fortnite, it's another Battle Royale game. And you can play that for free on Xbox One, Xbox One X. And in terms of the technical elements, it's way ahead of this with a very similar concept. And, of course, you don't have to pay for it at the moment for that particular mode. So, yeah, I'd say that Fortnite is well worth checking out if this particular concept resonates with you. But I think that's all we've got for you right now.
Yep, if you did find this video useful or insightful in any way, please do let us know with a like or subscribe. Thanks, Rich, for joining me.
No problem.
And as ever, we have this video on our Patreon at digitalfoundry.net, so if you want the source file, you can grab it there. Until next time, though, thanks for watching.